Hi there, and welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and I'm here to guide you through these practical and thoughtful conversations that are designed to deliver gospel-centered wisdom to your life. This week, we start a brand new series within our podcast called Life Together, and our Discipleship Director, Casey Andis, is going to lead us through weeks worth of content, taking apart Dietrich Bonhoeffer's classic book on how to live the Christian life together. And each and every week, we're going to take a different track and use a different quotation pulled from the book to gain some of the wisdom. So I would invite you to jump in, check it out, and see what God has in store for you this week. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and I'm joined today by Casey Andis. Casey is our Discipleship Director here at Covenant, and what we're doing today is actually starting something pretty interesting, I think. We are going to be doing a series of really conversations around a book. So you could almost think of it like a book club you can join when you don't have to read the book. And so what Casey has done is grab something that's really powerful in his life, really important to him, and he thinks it might bless the rest of us. And I'm gonna explain how we're gonna do it in a minute. But Casey, what book are we kind of unpacking, and why would you choose that book? What is it about that book that has us here talking about it?
Yes, so the book is called Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and it's what it sounds like. It's about our life together as Christians. And so one of the things that drew me to the book is, for one, it's short, so that's always helpful. But there's a lot of a ton of depth in it. And it just does a great job of explaining what our life together as Christians should look like, but at the same time being real about what it often looks like. And so in some ways, how to be thankful for it, but also how to pursue something more and pursue something that is healthier.
Well, that sounds like something we all absolutely need. So Life Together. So this would be conversation one. So what Casey has chosen to do, which I really think is clever, is instead of going like, let's read chapter one and then talk about it, Casey's pulled a series of quotes from the book that he feels are especially impactful. And so how we're going to structure these conversations, and this is the first of several, is I'll read a quote that he's pulled out of the book. I'm going to let him tell us why that's the one he chose, why that matters. And then together we'll figure out what it is in that quote that kind of blooms for all the wisdom to come out for the rest of us. So let me just get started. Let's jump right in. Life Together, week one. Here we are. Quote number one from Life Together is this. I'm going to read it. It says, quote, "It is easily forgotten that the fellowship of Christian brethren is a gift of grace, a gift of the kingdom of God that any day may be taken from us, that the time that still separates us from utter loneliness may be brief indeed." Okay, Casey, that is, that's a 1,000-pound anvil that just landed on me. So, what does that mean? Why'd you choose it? Tell us something about that.
Yeah, so that quote really stuck out to me. It's in the very first chapter. And it really stuck out to me because I think that we get used to being around other Christians, and we forget that not only historically, but even in our modern times, in other places in the world, Christian fellowship is not assumed. We don't. We're not always going to get that time. Even people here, there's even people in our church that may go through a surgery or may get sick one day, and then no longer can come to church and be around other Christians. And so I just think it's something that we take for granted a lot. And usually because we want we want our relationships to look different, which is not wrong. But we take for granted we can complain about what we have, I guess. And I feel like this quote really struck me because it helped me understand, I was actually just talking to someone even just a few weeks ago that just joined the church that were explaining, it's crazy that I get to come in fellowship and sing out loud in public because that was not their previous experience because of where they lived. And so it really helped me understand, I should be thankful for this, even if it's not exactly what I want it to look like.
That's really interesting. I first read that quote. I'm gonna be honest. You're smarter than me because I read it like 3 or 4 times and I was like, I have no idea where this could possibly go. Um, but now that you unpack it a little bit, it reminds me of kind of the way we all felt in 2020 when
Right.
something we loved went away. Whether, and that's not just church. I mean, that's like all the things you love, like your kids.
Yes.
Kids were doing school on Zoom, and all the various things that we used to just take for granted with human interaction went away. And then when people returned to those things, it was wild. I mean, it was wild that the first day back at church was wild. The first 2021 was some sort of record spending year in travel because people were like all this pent up demand to go to Disney World or go
To do
travel.
something. Yeah.
I go back to the things I got used to doing, and now it's no longer I no longer take it for granted. So that's, I think, powerful. What did you experience with pandemic life? I mean, you were ministering at that time as a college minister, so that had to totally jack your world. But what was your experience of that, and then how did it? I guess how did you find that gratitude for what you used to take for granted? Like, what was that experience for you?
Yeah, that's actually a great example. We don't even have to go that far back, right? To be like, hey, remember this happened. Like,
Yeah.
and we don't expect it to happen until it does. And so, yeah, for us, and at the time we were, had 3 kids under the age of 4. And so being isolated from friends, family, immediately, that just starts to take its toll, and just not be able to go out, and just be around people you love. So immediately it doesn't just affect, and in our ministry, I'd just taken over a new role. Our ministry is strictly online, and it didn't take long for everyone, including ourselves, but everyone in the ministry to be like, oh my, we took, like, can we just have a weekly meeting? Can we just come together for a dinner? And it heightened all those things. You realized quickly how important relationships, but being with each other in the same room is. And so there's still problems, right? There's still relational conflict at times, but being able to just be in each other's presence. And it reminds me, even Paul, like at the end of his life, he's like, man, it was such a great relief for, I think it was Timothy, to come visit me, to come see me. That's what he wanted most at the end of his life when he was isolated. So
that's good. I like this idea that things that were once burdens were now seen as blessings. On the flip side of that, I often say that every blessing is a burden. So,
right. Absolutely.
So what does it look like if I don't have the idealized version of community? So I'm in a church, I'm in a community, I'm in a group, I'm in a family, whatever, and it could be better. It's not ideal. How do I fight against that to have the gratitude I need to have to recognize this is a gift, but also kind of fight for the change to make it better? What does that tension look like?
Yeah, I think understanding first that it's always going to be a tension. And so, as you said, they're blessings, but every blessing is a burden, and so we think about our marriages, our kids, like they're great blessings, but they also bring burdens in our lives. So, I think the important thing is to understand, like, there's a great a verse where it's like Jesus entrusted himself to no man, but he wasn't cynical either, because he believed that God's grace could change anyone, including, if we have to apply that to ourselves, it can also change us. And so I think that allows us to live in that tension of, man, this is a gift. There are going to be problems. We're sinners, so we have to expect that. But I don't have to get cynical and get discouraged, because I also know, hey, God's grace is changing us over time. And so that, I think, allows you to live in the thankfulness, but also want to have more depth, more godly community.
I was reading something this week about loneliness, and there's loneliness is an epidemic, and we hear that a lot of places. The study said that a third of Americans report being, quote, lonelier than ever before.
Right.
And then that's like, and you're like, okay, digital world, and I spend more time online than I do in real life, and that's it's not great, but you go, I think I can understand that. The
Yeah.
one that kind of blew me away was 37% of the people responding did not anticipate having an in-person interaction with another human for at least
Right.
a week.
Yes.
And I'm like, short of a drive-through conversation, like they weren't going to have any real relational in-person interaction with any other human for the next week. They did not see any, and 37%. So 2 in 5 Americans don't foresee having real relational contact in the next week, which
Right.
is mind-blowing. What does that do when we consider like what's happening around us? What should that do to us to drive us back into what matters?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is understanding, like, so even as you're saying that, I'm realizing we're stuck in those same rhythms. In some ways, at times, it's chosen because we've gotten used to it, and so there is a comfort of not being around people. There's a low risk. You can't be annoyed if you're not around them. However, I think at the same time, we don't realize the benefits it has on our health. And so I think we just got to see that as like, man, taking that extra effort, even something that, I mean, even just a couple weeks ago, there was for my wife and I, we were invited over to spend to have dinner. And I'm not going to lie, we did not want to go. Our energy was low. We were tired. And we pushed through it because we thought, man, this is what we talk about. We talk about how we want to be around more people. We want to be in proximity with them. And so we did it despite not feeling like we wanted to, and then left being refueled and re-energized because it's what we needed. And so I think we have to press against a lot of times against what we know is comfortable. And going outside that discomfort of being around people, then suddenly you're like, man, I needed this way more. I mean, I knew up here I needed it, but I needed it way more than I thought. So,
Okay, well, that seems to push us towards actually applying this. So if we're supposed to potentially recognize the great gift we have in our ability to be with others, to be in relationship and fellowship with other believers, and we'll kind of apply it universally, but I think of like the stay-at-home mom who's kind of like only relational people are 6 years old, the retiree
yes.
who used to see people at work but maybe doesn't go to work anymore. So those are kind of the poles where you go, this is
Yeah.
extra work for these people. This could be really hard. And in the middle, it's just people like me who go, I could go see people on Friday night, or I could go into a cave Friday night, and which one am I going to choose?
Right.
So anywhere on there, this can be applied. But tell us about a little bit. How do I apply this, and how do I create and intentionally chase some of this gift that you say we have?
Yes. I mean, it just has to be intentional, right? And I think a lot of times, and I do this myself, we think it's going to happen. And so we plan all our whole week based off everything else. And then we hope at the end of the week, when we have extra time, let me invite or, let me initiate with another friend. But we always get to the end of the week and we either don't have time or we don't have energy. But if you're making that commitment earlier in the week, you just have to intentionally plan it. So I think that's the thing is, how can we intentionally plan I think more helpfully, a weekly rhythm of being around people, which ultimately leads, hey, that's why community groups are so helpful, because it is at least a bi-weekly rhythm. And so, and if you're in a community group and you're like, yeah, that's super helpful, and you're meeting every other week, I would say on the off weeks, find a family that you're close with, or a couple you're close with, or a person you're close with, and plan a family dinner. Do a Sunday afternoon dinner, do a Friday night movie night and pizza. They don't have to be these major planned events or that require a ton of setup. It can just be something that, man, if I could just build this weekly rhythm, then it's there. And then it eventually becomes something you look forward to, not just something that you are trying to force yourself into outside your comfort zone. So
I love that. If I want to start a men's group, or if there wanted to be a mom's night out situation happening, or any of these things, would you? Let me tell you my wiring, and let me see if you affirm it, because you're better at this than I am. I would be inclined to just start. And I wouldn't make we're going to do it for 12 months. I might just say, let's get together. My intention, I'd be intentional. Like you said, I think that word was big. Can we start getting together? And we're going to start once a month. So every first Friday, the guys are going to go grill or whatever. I don't know what men do. Who knows? And then the expectation was we start. And then while we're there, we say, we're doing this again. Let's set the next one. And then as that intimacy grows, it could, the idea, if I'm being intentional, is, hey, why don't we get together every other Wednesday at 6 a.m. for coffee and some real like Bible study? So there's ways to start, like just get started, and then you can stair step that into greater depth. Is that something you would say is a good idea?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really good point, because I think we have to have all the details figured out before we start versus just starting something. Start there, build on it, and then that depth will grow, that bond will grow. But a lot of times it just takes, you just have to start. So,
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we got some work ahead of us. If people are listening, and we are unapologetically a hyper-local kind of podcast. So if you're listening and you're in Bowling Green and you go, I would be interested in a community group, you can email Casey at bgcovenant.org. You can do that. You can go to the website, bgcovenant.org/community, and sign up there and get interested in how do I find this and how does it work? We'll make it work for you. You just have to tell us you're interested. Beyond that, some of you might need to be making a coffee date or reaching out to somebody, inviting some dudes over to grill meats or talk about Jesus, or taking some moms out and getting away from the kids for a minute. Whatever it is you have to do, I think Casey has laid out some really intentional steps that everybody can take. So, Casey, thank you for making time for this. And I'm excited to continue the conversation. So we look forward to jumping back in for life together in the weeks to come. Thanks, Casey.
Yep. Thank you.